I'm going to cover 3 subject areas. With the food standards being released last week, I thought I'd make the opportunity to cover training, but also go into nutrition, hydration, strategy and technology as well. So the initial hospital food review launched in October 2020. Seems a long time ago now, doesn't it? Clearly recommended and identified the need for staff training by providing more training under number 1 of the recommendations for hospital caterers and under the nutrition hydration recommendation number 2, with a particular focus of the food service element under the recommendation number 2. In the new food standards released last week, it is covered under standards 5 and 6 as well. So what happened at NUH? So we've always had a toolkit, reference, document, little booklet, whatever you'd want to call it, that covers many areas of nutrition and hydration. And that was used for our food service staff as a reference tool, our chefs as well to refer to. You could argue that that document just got left in kitchen cupboards on wards and just hidden away, and perhaps not used as much as it was intended to. And we had no audit trail, so no idea who was using it or if they were using it, and if it was helpful. We didn't really have any feedback from it. So the pandemic obviously came along and changed the way of working quite dramatically, didn't it, in the NHS? So MS Teams was used a lot more, and this kind of created an opportunity for us to look at how we deliver training and think differently of how we could approach it and do it differently. So it was decided that we would create some short videos, podcasts, for our catering teams initially on a range of the nutrition and hydration subjects that are important. They covered things as to what is nutrition and hydration and why it's important for patients in hospital, through to special diets such as renal, low fibre, diabetic, celiac and so on. We already had quite an extensive food safety training in-house, set up, ready and in use, and allergen training obviously part of that as well. Each of the videos range from lasting 3 minutes to some of the shorter ones through to 10 to 12 minutes for the longer session. So the actual process of it, the content was created. We managed to recruit some admin staff who had no input into the catering service within the trust and asked them to be our guinea pigs really. So they went through the training material, we tweaked it, we adapted it several times as you do, went backwards and forwards. We're fortunate as well, we have 3 training facilities officers in facilities, so they will help with that tweaking, that editing, checking the language and also the visual aspect of as well. And then with that, we had to then do all the voice-over recording, which is an interesting challenge, especially when you have to listen to yourself back and hear yourself talking. So some of the catering team have been quite proactive and completed the training already. However, as always, there's always delays, isn't there? So the facilities training officers have been busy. We've been adding it to the ESR, your electronic staff records, for all the facilities staff within catering. Added it as additional role-related training for their jobs. So it is now officially being rolled out in January 2023 for catering teams. It is broken down into 2 around 30-minute sessions that were delivered within the year to all staff. When it's completed, when the staff have completed it, it'll be recorded within their ESR. Staff who have struggled perhaps or need a bit of extra support, that will be identified, and that support will be given to those members of staff. We, like others, are still struggling with our recruitment, particularly with food service staff. However, we do know that we need to train staff and support them to engage, encourage them and to invest in them going forward. So it's really important that we do this training for staff. We're aware of the pressures that staff have in just completing the standard mandatory training. But the idea is to keep that responsibility and accountability with the nursing teams, the ward teams, but just to empower that food service assistant if they get asked for a renal diet, something to be able to refer back to. And know how to provide that patient's meal safely for them. Nationally, with the food standards, I'm not sure if some of my colleagues, I think they are meant to be here, but they may have got caught in traffic. We are looking at the national standards, and they are putting some work together to develop national resources for training as well. So hopefully that will come soon. Okay, so moving on to IDSI. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the term IDSI, but it's the International Dysphagia Diet Standardisation Initiative, which is your modified texture for food and fluid. So those involved in catering should be very familiar with this. It is well established now. However, incidents are still occurring in many trusts. At NUH, we had a very serious fatal incident in our emergency department area where a lady was given toast and she was on a pureed diet. From that, the learning and the coroner's court investigation was that we need to do better at providing training for all our staff on IDSI. So together, myself, our lead speech and language therapist and a practice development matron for nutrition, we worked together to produce some e-learning material on IDSI. Our objective was for it to be mandatory for every single member of staff within the trust, and certainly for all those involved in the care of patients with their food and fluid. So the easiest part, in one respect, was putting all that e-learning material together. At least we naively thought so. It did take some doing. Trying to capture IDSI and its key learning points in a creative and interesting way without becoming too laboursome and risking the patient safety elements being lost. We also had to factor in the target audience. We were targeting doctors, nurses, food service staff, so quite an array of staff. So that was the easy bit. The next bit was presenting it to our learning education board within the trust. I can't take any credit for this. This is when I had to bow out and take on other pressures. So I left this to our speech and language and our practice development matron. But it took about 6 months going backwards and forwards, presenting it to the board about getting it as a mandatory training for all staff within the trust. Lots of in-depth detailed conversations took place, as you can imagine. They get a lot of requests for different subjects to be mandatory. Eventually, it was approved. However, with 18,000 staff at NUH, it took a long time to go through every person's job title and job description to meet who and match who needed to do the training. We got challenges. We got challenges from dietitians, doctors, speech and language as to why they should do it. However, the answer was it is mandatory, so to do it. And the patient safety element outweighed every argument really. It is broken down, so clinical ward staff to complete it every 2 years. Those who are not necessarily patient-facing but might be in outpatients, for example, every 1 year is a one-off package. Within catering, again, it was identified that we need to just adapt the training slightly. So again, working with our training facilities officers, we took out a lot of the clinical detail in there. Obviously, the initial training was targeted for doctors and clinical teams as well. And we didn't need that level of information for the catering team. So the catering, the facilities training officers were heavily involved in that, and that has now been rolled out. So it's on your electronic staff records, and staff are completing it. The question was should nutrition hydration training be mandatory for all staff? I'm sure in an ideal world, if we had lots of time, we would all say yes without a doubt, wouldn't we? But the challenges are unavoidable. Very conscious of putting too much on staff when they're already under pressure. Nationally, the hospitals that I visit and caterers that I speak to, there is often a general feeling that the caterer's voice isn't often heard enough within the clinical world. So hopefully, by making the nutrition hydration training and IDSI training mandatory, we'll speak volumes. And we all eat and drink, don't we, whether that's in hospital or outside of hospital. You could argue that nutrition hydration is equally as important as resource training. We eat and drink to survive, don't we? But that's me just being maybe a little bit controversial, putting that out there. Okay. So going back to the food and Food standards review, a little bit about nutrition hydration. So one of the standards is organisations must have a food and drink strategy. It's standard number 2 from the new food standards published last week. Viewed as a live document showing how the organisation delivers safe and nutritious quality food and drink, with detailed measurable outcomes demonstrating how it is meeting the required standards. So again, from being fortunate to go out there and speak to other caterers and nursing staff and dietetic teams within other hospitals, various conversations from stakeholders carried out by members of the expert panel, feedback has been overwhelming that it would be helpful for a nutrition hydration template of some sort of resource to be available. We recognise that some trusts already do have a strategy in place or working towards one. There are a lot of trusts without any. But to have a document that could be uplifted and used as a starting point would be something that is really helpful. It's been very much voiced to us. So from this feedback, we have made quite substantial progress in developing a strategy template. We are aware that NHS England has a toolkit available for strategy writing. However, this template lifts that and takes it one step further. It adds a lot of the detail, a lot of the wording that you'd expect to find in a nutrition hydration strategy, with all the standards, the good, the best practice information, all inputted and referenced, ready to use. The idea is that any trust can uplift it, they can personalise it and adapt it, edit it to suit the needs and preferences of the trust and its patient population. It doesn't have to replace any existing strategies, but it's designed to support those who don't yet have one or are working towards. Okay, so carrying on with the food review and the food standards, technology. Technology, and particularly electronic meal ordering for patients. So this comes under section 2 of the new food standards, patient food and drink, and recommendation number 5 from the Hospital Food Review 2020. So every hospital should implement a digital meal ordering system which can be integrated with patients' care plans, reducing the time between ordering and the food service. Patients are more likely to eat a meal they've chosen closer to the actual meal being served rather than having to decide a day before or sometimes 2 days before in some cases. It can support and manage food waste recording, along with added patient safety features when it comes to managing patients with special dietary needs and food allergies in particular. The food standards document covers the core elements of the benefits of technology for meal ordering. However, we still are identifying that one solution does not fit all, and it does not replace the need for person-centred support and assistance. Again, from hospital site visits that we've carried out, stakeholder conversations, trusts are all at varying different stages of technology with their electronic meal ordering for patients. Some have nothing, some have back-of-house systems in place but don't have the front of house with the patient meal ordering. And then others are well established and have had the systems in place for many years. There's a whole host of suppliers of technology out there. Can be a minefield is what we're learning and the feedback we've got. If you've not gone down that route before, ensure exactly what you need to know and what you need for your service as well. Some caterers very much trying to do it in isolation as well and not yet got that clinical dietetic support fully involved. So from the feedback, we have developed or almost finished, a matrix document working with the suppliers to demonstrate what functions are available for each of the different systems out there, with the idea that trusts can navigate their way through the information. To support the matrix further, detailed resource of information will also be available as well to use. From various conversations with trusts and catering teams, we have recognised, especially with mental health settings, that technology is proving difficult to implement and use. There is no right or wrong way with this. I think that's quite clear. And different trusts may need different levels of technology dependent on their patient population to use. And on the next slide, there should be just a couple of examples from the matrix. I appreciate that's quite small, so you won't be able to see that, but it does just break down a list of all the key functions that you would hope technology would provide. So whether it's patient information linking to the patient, hospital patient records, or whether the user has to put in a patient identifier themselves. Allergens, does it display all 14 allergens? Does it give you the option to add other allergens bespoke to the trust? We always get the ones for onions, don't we? And pepper and garlic and all those things. Can allergen information be uplifted directly from suppliers to the system, removing that need for manual inputting at trust level, and so on? The menus themselves, does it support the use of multiple menus? Does it have visual pictorial images of the menu choices, different portion sizes? It attaches law label information, and so on. So we're trying to make this quite in-depth and almost a checklist to get you going, really, of what you feel you need for your trust.